Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to literally peel back the layers of Java's architecture. This is a language running on billions of devices worldwide right now. We're going on a journey to discover exactly how this legendary programming language processes your code. We'll track it all the way from the high-level syntax that you and I can easily read, straight down to the bare metal execution on your machine. So, whether you're a seasoned developer or you're just kind of fascinated by how software actually works under the hood, this is absolutely a trip worth taking.
So let's kick things off with a massive question, one that completely upended software engineering back in the mid-90s. How can a single piece of software seamlessly execute on vastly different hardware architectures and operating systems without being totally rewritten for each one? Really think about that for a second. We're talking about the exact same code running on a massive enterprise server, a standard Windows desktop, and a tiny smart device. How is that even possible?
Well, the answer boils down to a revolutionary philosophy called WORA, which stands for Write Once, Run Anywhere. This is the foundational design goal of Java. It brilliantly shifted the heavy lifting of hardware translation completely away from the programmer. Instead of you having to write different versions of your code for Mac, Linux, and Windows, you just write it once. Then a universal execution engine steps in and handles the rest.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the Java philosophy. Second, we'll go inside the JVM. Third, loading in memory. Fourth, the execution engine. And finally, we'll compare Java and Kotlin. We're essentially taking a spatial journey through the exact path your code travels.
Starting off with Section 1, the Java philosophy, our universal translator.
To really grasp why Java has stuck around for 30 years, we first have to understand what happens the absolute second you finish writing a script and hit compile. See, unlike languages like C or C++ that compile your code directly into architecture-specific machine code, Java does something totally different. The Java compiler, known as JAVAC, compiles your code into an intermediate format. These get saved as .class files, and they contain what we call bytecode. Now, this bytecode is completely platform independent. It has no idea if it's eventually going to run on a supercomputer or a smartwatch.
Moving on to Section 2, inside the JVM, the engine under the hood.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. That bytecode, it's basically gibberish to your computer's actual hardware. Your CPU cannot read it at all. And that is exactly why it gets handed off to the true star of the show, the Java Virtual Machine. As you can see in this architectural breakdown, there are three main components. You've got the class loader up top, the various memory areas in the middle, and the execution engine at the bottom. The JVM acts as a hosted virtual environment that sits right on top of your host operating system. It's the actual engine that grabs that platform-independent bytecode and brings it to life.
All right, Section 3, loading in memory, preparing our code for execution.
Let's track a .class file as it first enters the JVM. The class loader doesn't just blindly accept whatever code you throw at it. It prepares it in 3 precise, really meticulous steps. First up is loading, where it just reads the binary data. Second is linking, and this step is fascinating because of the verification phase. A bytecode verifier rigorously checks to ensure the class file is structurally correct and safe before it allocates even a single byte of memory. If it fails this check, the JVM just throws an error and stops dead in its tracks. Finally, we have initialization, which is where all your static blocks get executed.
So, once the code is safely loaded and verified, the JVM turns into this highly organized librarian. It sorts all your data into distinct memory areas. The method area holds your shared class metadata. The heap area is where all your dynamic objects are allocated. And by the way, this is also where the garbage collector lives, sweeping up objects you don't need anymore. Then we have Java stacks for your method calls, PC registers to track execution for every single thread, and native method stacks for interfacing with non-Java code like C or C++.
Let's zoom in on those Java stacks for just a second. For actual execution, every active thread gets assigned its very own specific stack. As methods are called, individual stack frames are pushed onto the stack, and then when the method is done, they get popped right off. It operates in a super strict last-in, first-out sequence. This guarantees that your thread-specific execution flow stays perfectly organized no matter how crazy or complex your application gets. Actually, if you've ever seen a Stack Overflow error crash your code, well, this exact structure is what literally just overflowed.
Section 4, the execution engine, where we finally translate to native machine code.
Now that everything is safely loaded and organized in the JVM's memory areas, it is finally time to run it. This execution engine is where the real magic happens. It reads our intermediate bytecode and translates it into host-specific machine instructions that your specific CPU can actually understand. And it does this using two distinct tools, an interpreter and a highly advanced just-in-time compiler.
Now, back in the day, interpreting bytecode line by line was painfully slow. That's exactly where just-in-time, or JIT compilation, sweeps in to save the day. While the standard interpreter handles the straightforward initial execution, the JIT compiler is working quietly in the background. It profiles your application on the fly, identifies frequently used code paths, which we usually call hotspots, and optimizes them directly into highly efficient native machine code right there at runtime. It is an absolute game changer for performance.
You can actually see this translation happening right here. Over on one side, we have the straightforward bytecode dispatching logic, but just look at the dynamically generated, highly optimized assembler code on the other side. The JVM produces at runtime for simple addition operation. It totally bypassed the interpreter for the specific hotspot so it could talk directly to the hardware. Pretty cool, right?
Finally, Section 5, Java versus Kotlin, in evolving the developer experience.
So we know that JVM is this absolute beast under the hood, but how are we actually writing code for it today? Let's compare traditional Java to one of its biggest modern rivals, Kotlin. A classic complaint about Java is just how wordy it can be. For example, traditional Java relies heavily on POJOs, or plain old Java objects, to hold data. That means you have to manually write out all the private fields, constructors, getters, setters, and equals methods. It's a lot. Kotlin, on the other hand, brought us data classes. This compresses dozens of lines of that utility boilerplate into one single elegant line of code.
And it's a similar story with type inference. Kotlin really minimizes developer clutter here. Instead of having to explicitly declare a variable as a string or an integer, like you traditionally had to do in Java, Kotlin just deduces it automatically using val or var keywords. This feature was such a huge hit with developers that Java has actually been adopting similar type inference capabilities in its newer releases, basically just to stay competitive.
But here is the absolute best part of this whole ecosystem. Despite all these syntax differences, Kotlin and Java have 100% interoperability. Why? Because when you hit compile, both Kotlin and Java code compile down into the exact same .class bytecode. The JVM honestly doesn't care which language you use to write it. Because of this, you can seamlessly mix and match Java and Kotlin files inside the exact same project without a second thought.
So as we wrap up this explainer and reflect on the incredible journey your code takes from a high-level language all the way down to optimized assembler code, I want you to consider this. Maybe Java's enduring success over the last 30 years isn't actually about the Java language syntax itself. Maybe, just maybe, the true secret to its immortality is the incredible universal engine it runs on, the JVM. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.